Hi friends, this is Joe, and this is episode number 202 of the Dekahedron Vanish podcast, take 2. I say that because I went out to the same spot I recorded last week, and I recorded the full episode, and I showed, for the YouTube people, I showed something on camera, and I bent down to put it away, and when I bent back up, for some reason, the camera, which was set to autofocus once and lock on that focused on something behind me. When I came, the rest of the video was out of focus. So here we go again. So this week we're going to be talking more about the Holmes edition, but as we are wont to do, because in the new format of the podcast, we talk about all things science fiction and fantasy, about fandom. That's what fanish means, by the way, things related to being a fan of science fiction and fantasy. What I have in my hand is the draft of the manuscript for my first submission to a professional magazine. I am going to submit it to Analog Science Fiction and Fact. It's an old science fiction magazine. It's been around forever. It's one of the classics. Analog, Asimov's a magazine of fantasy and science fiction, I would say, of the big three. Clark's World probably falls in somewhere around there. Anyway, I'm being eaten by bugs. I'm going to submit it. This is the copy I gave to my wife last night to proofread, and she looked it over, and she made some marks. But it's 9,200 words, which is 44 pages, double spaced. So I didn't expect her to do it in one sitting, but she said that she had to see what happened next type thing. So I think that's a good sign. Of course, playing the numbers. Playing the numbers, for a submission probably will be rejected and everything, but I'm hopeful. And if you don't submit it, they will never say yes, right? So here we go. All right. So what are we going to do? Oh, we're talking about Holmes edition. And so I had a message on episode 200, the one I did with James, where we talked about the Holmes edition of D&D, the first edition that James and I played and everything. I had a message from a viewer called Mr. Rourke, and I am going to address that today. And let me read that message to you right now. Mr. Rourke said, Holmes is one of the most lethal and hardest to play D&D versions. The big rule that upsets people is that to recover spells, a magic user must go all the way home and sleep in their bed at night. However, at level 1, the magic user can make magic scrolls. Thanks for that, Mr. Rourke. I am going to, I think I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. And not so much disagree, I'm just going to say that Holmes isn't that much different than the other editions around that time period. So I don't think it's the worst. I don't think the point that you're bringing out about magic users is really much worse than it is in the other editions. And I'm going to tell you why I think that. And I do think the second part you said, where magic users can make scrolls at first level, I don't think you were saying that's part of the things that make people mad. I think you were saying, that's a plus. It has that going for it, which I agree with you on that. But I said that in that episode, and I'm going to say it again when we get there. All right, so I think I have like 5 or 6 points. Let's get started. First point is spellbooks. So you say that magic users have to go all the way back home to study. I think you said sleep in their own bed, which isn't quite right. What the book says is that they have to go to their own study. And I would say that study means wherever your spell books are. And OD&D said that they had to leave the dungeon, pretty much for the day. And And AD&D doesn't say any of those things. But I think, as I'm going to make clear, even though it never says you cannot study your spells in the dungeon, you couldn't study your spells in dungeon. Yeah. This is the Gygax era of D&D, and Gygax viewed D&D as a resource management game. You know, you have to manage your hit points, you have to manage your magic items, you have to manage your spells, you have to manage your torches, you have to manage your rations, all that. You had to manage your men-at-arms, your hirelings, and all that fun stuff. So to him, managing spells was part of the game. And you did that before you set out into the dungeon. And that is why Holmes and original D&D are the way they are. And when you get into AD&D, it's kind of like he was feeling pushback. So it was like, fine, you can do it, but not really. And I'm going to show you all the ways that it's not really. So, the first reason is the encumbrance value of spell books. So, if you read AD&D, rules is written, you need a spell book for every level of spell. So all your first level spells go into one spell book. All your second level spells go into another spell book. All your third level spells go into another third spell book. Furthermore, if you find any spells, like you kill a evil magic user and you take his spell book, you either have to copy those spells into your spell book, which takes the right spell and write, W-R-I-T-E, and time and stuff, or you have two different spell books for first level. Each spell book weighs 200 gold pieces worth of encumbrance. So if you're carrying around 5 spell books, say you're a mid-level spell ranger, spellcaster, and you have up to 5th level spells, or you have these different spell books across, that you came across, that is 1,000 gold pieces. That is 1,000 gold pieces worth of encumbrance, which for your average magic user with a strength of 11 or so, that brings their movement down to 60 before you even add their weapons, their daggers or the staff or whatever, and their backpack and the rope and the water and the oil and all the adventuring gear. So, yeah, so technically you could bring your spell books into the dungeon in AD&D, whereas in Holmes it flat right says, you can't. But you really couldn't. Or if you did, it was a big penalty because of encumbrance. And you might say, yeah, but we didn't use encumbrance rules. Well, if you're ignoring half the rules, then why are you worried about a rule that says you can't bring your spell book in the dungeon? Ignore that one, If you're not playing the game, don't play the game. Anyway, that was reason number 1. Okay, second reason is the nutritional and sleep requirements. So again, Holmes edition says that you have to go back to your study, wherever that is, wherever your spell books are, and, have a full night's rest. OD&D said it happens when you're out of the dungeon, which in those early days, you're either in the dungeon or nothing was happening, very broadly. I mean, there were overland adventures and everything, but that's just an outside dungeon. Anyway, you get the idea. In AD&D, it specifies that you can only study spells after a, I can talk. You can only study spells if you're well rested and fully nourished, right? And it spells that out. It says for a first level spell, you need at least 4 hours 4 hours sleep. For 9th level spell, you need like 12 hours of sleep, right? So again, you're not, even if you lug your 200 gold piece, spell book into the dungeon, now you have to go find a place and sleep for 4 hours. 4 hours, an hour is 6 turns. So you're 24 turns with wandering monster check every turn on a 1 through 6, chances are you're going to get 4 wandering monster encounters. When you have that wandering monster encounter, you wake up. You didn't get that hours of rest, right? So you got to do it all over again. Again, it's not very likely you're going to be able to restudy your spells in the dungeon. The third reason is the amount of time to study. In Holmes, you just go away overnight, and next morning you have all your spells after you've studied. You say, hey, I studied. In AD&D, pretty much the same way. In AD&D, you have each spell takes time to study. Like a first level spell only takes 15 minutes. But if you're at, let's say you're a 3rd level, so you have, you have 2 first level and a 2nd level? Or is it 3 first, whatever. So that's 15, 15, and 30. So that's an hour that you need to spend studying after your 4 hours of sleep. So that's 5 hours you need in the dungeon. And of course, being fully nourished. So say another 10 minutes, another turn there to eat after you wake up to be well nourished to do it. So the time to actually study the spells. And of course, with your higher levels, it could be like 12 hours of study if your spells were completely depleted. Yeah. This is what we talked about before, is the scrolls. In Holmes Edition, you can cast a scroll at 1st level. Cast a scroll. You can write a scroll at 1st level. I talked in the episode how I loved that. That was one of the 3 things I loved about this this edition. And you're right, because it's a gold sink, it's a time sink. But more importantly, it lets a magic user feel magical even at 1st level. They carry around their scrolls, they can cast them. In AD&D, you have to be at least 7th level. Same thing, I think, in AD&D, to write out a magical spell. So you're not doing that in the beginning. So you pointed this one out, but I am agreeing. This is another point in Holmes. Holmes magic users are more powerful in this regard. Number 6 is that AD&D specifies that if you are interrupted during your study, that time doesn't count. And it even specifies that wandering monsters count as an interruption. So, what do we say? It was 15 minutes to study a 1st level spell. So that's a turn and a half, right? So you had 4 hours of sleep, which we calculated to be 24 turns, and then another turn and a half, just call it 2, plus the food, call it 3. Again, if any wandering monsters come along in that time, it resets the clock and you have to start all over again. Again, yeah, you can say, yeah, we could take our books with you, but again, it didn't do you a lot of good. And that's just to study 1 1st level spell. If you're studying more spells, it's more turns and more chances that wandering monsters are going to come by and spoil the study. The final point, wow, I have so many bug bites. If I record out here again, remind me to bring some bug repellent. Anyway, this is my backyard, by the way. Anyway, where was I? Oh, the last point is that, AD&D pretty much just said overnight. And, it said, they specified that you could only memorize each spell once per day. So even if you left the dungeon early that day, you couldn't study spells and go back. So it was that same routine. So again, Holmes isn't more lethal, I don't think. It's not more limiting on spellcasters. It's just different. But thank you very much for that comment, Mr. Rourke. And I do appreciate it. And if you disagree with anything I said, just drop me a line. While I was preparing this episode, I got another message from Mr. Rourke. And he said, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to look it up. I'm going to go by memory. He said that Monster Manual 1 and Monster Manual 2 were written for Holmes and not AD&D. And sir, you are completely wrong. That's a lie. You are half wrong and other half mostly wrong. partially wrong. Anyway, so let's cover where you're totally wrong. First of all, Monster Manual 2 absolutely positively was written for AD&D. The time frame was 1977, Holmes came out. 1977 was the first AD&D release, which was the first Monster Manual. After that, after a year or two, it was Fiend Folio, which was the monster book from TSR UK, which was a bunch of submissions for like White Dwarf magazine that the editor took with him when he left. And then Monster Manual 2 came out during the definitely well into the AD&D era, right? All 3 books were out by then. Monster Manual, Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide. In fact, Deities and Demigods even came out before Monster Manual 2. So when Monster Manual 2 was put together, it was well established that it was in the AD&D line. So absolutely, completely wrong there. For Monster Manual 1, there's nuance there. So Monster Manual 1 was definitely written for AD&D. It was the first book of the AD&D line. Where you get partial credit, though, is that Gygax didn't sit down and design AD&D and then write out the books. Gygax had an idea what he wanted AD&D to be, and he started writing the books, and he would update the design as he went along. And because Monster Manual was the first book released, most of the game wasn't designed yet. Most of the differences that make AD&D weren't developed yet. So when you look at Monster Manual, it is clearly written with original D&D in mind. And an easy proof of that, and this is probably where you're getting the idea, is that when you look at the armor classes, AD&D armor class for an unarmed man is 10, and D&D armor class for an unarmed man is 9. Armor class 10 never existed before AD&D, but if you look through the entire Monster Manual, you won't find a single monster. You won't find a single monster with an armor class of 10. So that part of the rules hadn't been developed yet. Same thing with most of it. So Monster Manual is definitely more compatible, air quotes there for those of you who are just listening, more compatible with D&D than AD&D, but there's no way that you can't say that it was written for AD&D because it was the first book of AD&D. And it's definitely compatible because people used it for years with AD&D. So I will give you partial credit that when you look at it, it's more of a original D&D feel. But again, I would say more original D&D than Holmes. And yeah, so I'm going to mostly disagree with you on that one. But thanks for the comment. I really appreciate it. And yeah. Another comment I had was from Retro DM Ray. And he thanked me for the shout out. I gave him a shout out on the last video I did where I was answering his question. And you know, that really just tickles me pink because he has like 8 times the subscribers I do and everything on YouTube. And yeah, so for him to be thanking me when I thank you for the comment and the question and letting me like get a whole episode out of what you asked. You know, I'm not monetized. I'm not in this to be monetized. I don't think he is either. Based on the number of subscribers, I don't think he can be. But, you know, I do this because I love science fiction and fantasy and gaming. And I want to share that with like-minded people, with other people who love science fiction, fantasy, and gaming. And I want to talk about it. And I love it when you talk back. So instead of monetization, my reward, my payment, is when people engage with me, when people send me those comments and everything. And I super duper appreciate it. So thank you, DM Ray. Again, thank you, Mr. Rourke. And thank you, we're going to talk about it, James and Jason from Nerds RPG Variety Cast and Merc the Meek, and one other. Yeah, so thank all of you. You are why I do this. So the next comment, we just talked about this, is Jason from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. It's off the air now, but the back catalog is all there. And he left me a message, and he said that exceptional strength was added in Greyhawk and for OD&D. And he's absolutely correct. You are 100% correct, Jason. And I appreciate you keeping me straight and narrow on the straight and narrow there, keeping me honest, telling me the truth. Funny thing is, I was watching the episode, so yeah, I watch them and I listen to them when they go out to make sure that I didn't accidentally put something wrong out there. Not wrong information-wise, but something I shouldn't put out. Did I say something bad? Then I can take it down. I've never had to do that. But I listened just in case. And so I was watching the episode and I was like, wait, that was in Greyhawk. But I didn't even catch it when I was doing the edit, because if I was catching it during the edit, I would have put it on screen. For you people who only listen to the podcast and you never watch it on YouTube, there are times, lots of times, when I say a boo-boo. And if I catch it during edit, I will put it on screen. And sometimes I do a voiceover and interrupt into the vocal podcast, but not usually. I almost always put it on screen, not always on the verbal podcast. But anyway, thanks for the comment, Jason. Thanks for keeping me in line. Next, we have a voicemail from Merc the Meek. Merc the Meek is the host of the Merc the Meek podcast. And also great podcast. Check it out. He had this to say.
Hey, Joe. Congrats on episode 200 and best of luck with the rest of your new format. Hopefully it brings you more joy. And it seems like it's going to be a little bit more like the Anchorite, which is just fine. But I was thinking about your Holmes versus AD&D, the differences there, and variable versus fixed weapon damage. And you mentioned like simulationist versus gamist. And the thing that popped into my head was like, well, maybe you want variable weapon damage just to like give meaningful choices to your weapons. But characters that are just interested in a certain archetype will probably just gravitate towards a weapon. And I suppose that gives a little bit more freedom. If you're going to be doing the same amount of damage, no matter what your weapon type, you can kind of fulfill that archetype without being suboptimal, quote unquote, if that even matters in the situation. So, yeah, it's got me pondering a little bit more. But just wanted to say that. I'm looking forward to wherever you take this new podcast direction. So thanks and take care.
Thanks for that, Merc. Thanks for the congratulations. I really appreciate that. Yeah, you're right. The new, air quotes there, the new format for the podcast is a lot like my zine, which is called Basic Simplicity. No, lies. That's what it used to be called. It's called Bard Song and the Anchorite. I also have a zine in NAPA, which is the National Amateur Press Association. It's the APA for the National Fantasy Fan Federation. That's like the oldest science fiction club in the United States. It's like 85 years old, non-regional one at least. And yeah, so I have one in there. It's called Mosaic, but that follows the same format. Before that, I used to be in an APA called Apidemic, and my zine in there followed the same format. And before that, I was in Tapadance, and my zine there followed the same format. And it's not just my zine. Most people's zines follow that format. And the format, is you open up with a little bit about yourself. We call it natter in the APA world. And then you get into whatever, content you want. And then you get into mailing comments, which in podcast terms, this section right here would be the mailing comments, is where you address things that people have said to you. Not only in the APA world, but a lot of other podcasts I listen to, not just gaming ones, follow that same format, but even the gaming universe. Like if you listen to Joe Hindsightless, by the way, another great gaming podcast, I recommend that. It's called Hindsightless. The host there is named Joe. The only problem with him is he's trying to steal my name. Back off, Joe. He's going to say that his podcast was out first, but I was in existence. I was in this universe before he was, so that doesn't count. My point counts. Anyway, where was I going with this? Oh, his follows the same point, right? Format, right? If you ever listen to his podcast, he opens up and he tells you what's been happening in his life, and then he tells you what he wants to talk about that episode, and then if there's feedback, he addresses it. It is a standard format, so yes, it will be a lot more. It will be a lot more like the Apple, but it's a very standard podcast format. All right. The other thing you said, you talked about the 1d6 and versus variable damage. Again, I think it's the very first episode of this podcast. If you go back into my feed and look at the first episode, I think it's that one. It might be 2 or 3 though, but it's definitely really early. James and I talked about 1d6 versus whatever. That was the original format of the show, by the way, is that we pick a topic and we both present our side. And because we are naturally different people, we fall in different places on the GNS triangle. We like different things in games. It would create a natural friction usually. And so he took the side of variable damage. I took the side of 1d6. In your comment, you said simulationist versus gamist. That's not what I said. I said simulationist versus narrativist. You are right that a gamist person thinks that the amount of damage you do is a tactical decision, that if you're taking it out of the player's hand, it's one less thing that the player has control of. It makes it a little less gamey. I am a little more narrativistly, and so that's why I like the thing. An example, it's in that episode, episode number 1 or whatever. James likes characters with 2 weapons. You ask him why, and he'll tell you that because he can see his character. He's not aphantasic like I am, apparently. He can see his character when he creates it, and the character has 2 weapons. He'll also tell you that he's been doing martial arts for like 50 years. And he does, like, in addition to weapons free, he does like some of the weapony martial arts. And right, you use 2 when you do that, or he does, right? And so it's a natural thing. And I would even argue in support of him that your Western European knight, you know, with his sword and his shield, that shield is another weapon, right? You use it to bash, and then right? So he always wants 2 weapons. And if you're saying that every attack just does 1d6, you can like, sure. And it lets him be true to his character concept. But if you're being gamist, then you gotta say, and especially if you're being simulationist, you gotta say, well, you have 2 weapons. Does that mean you get 2 attacks per round? But it's that tactical choice. You're taking that away if a person's a gamist. So, me, I'm not that tactical person. I'm much more about the story and about the characters. And so that's why I like the 1d6. It lets you focus on the character and what they're doing. And I view the decisions in other places where roles are made these days. But in the olden days, you would just role play them. That's me. Yeah, so I think I covered all your points there, Merck. So thank you very much for that message. I truly appreciate it. Again, I recommend checking out his podcast. He's been talking about martial arts lately too. Bugs. Yeah, so thanks for that. There was another comment from someone named Jeff Fisher, maybe. I can't remember exactly. But he said that 5e isn't a role-playing game, it's a combat creation game. I mean, it's a character creation game. I can't speak to that. I have never played that game. When 5e first came out, I think I downloaded the starter. It wasn't called the starter kit. It was an intro kit or something. And I looked at it, and I didn't like their life path things. I thought that took away role-playing. And, you know, there were some things I looked at I didn't like. I said, there's no point in that. I don't play 5e, I don't play 4e, I don't even play 3e anymore. I'm into, like I just said, I'm very narrativist, so I play very story type games, Fudge, Dungeon World maybe, my own games, which is really what I lean towards these days, like Gem. I should do an episode about Gem someday. Where was I going with this? Oh, if I do go into, I want to, if I'm feeling gamist, because I do sometimes, and D&D is a good rule system for that. But even instead of playing straight D&D, I'll probably pick up my copy of White Box Fantasy, fantastic medieval adventure game, and I will play that instead. I think I covered all the points. There is another voicemail from Jason, but I am being eaten alive, so I am not going to play that right now. Thanks for watching and or listening, and until next time, happy gaming, happy life. Bye.